In the year 2154, Earth has become a complete disaster due to overcrowding, disease, and pollution, forcing humanity to abandon it. The wealthy class constructs a space station named Elysium, where they can reside free of any diseases or environmental contamination, using advanced medical pods that can cure any ailment. Meanwhile, the impoverished population, such as Max, an orphan, and his friend Fry, are left behind on the desolate Earth. Max and Fry spend a significant amount of time together, delighting in reading books about Elysium, to the extent that Max makes a promise to take her there one day. In an effort to save up enough money for tickets to Elysium, Max starts stealing, despite repeated warnings from the nun who oversees the orphanage. Years later, in Los Angeles, Max is a reformed thief on probation, striving to maintain a legitimate job at a factory. Despite his efforts to stay out of trouble, Max faces discrimination due to his criminal record when officer robots stop and search his backpack at the bus station. Max tries to defuse the situation with humor, but the robots respond with violence, causing him to fall to the ground and injure his arm. Eventually, the robots find nothing suspicious and allow him to leave. Upon seeking medical attention for his injury, Max is surprised to encounter Fry, whom he hasn't seen in a while. While she attends to his arm, they seize the opportunity to catch up and Max musters the courage to ask her out on a date, to which Fry eventually agrees, albeit hesitantly. Later, Max begins working at Armadine, the corporation responsible for constructing Elysium and producing robots, which is owned by the billionaire Carlyle. However, Max's manager attempts to terminate him for tardiness, prompting Max to explain that he was involved in an accident. Despite keeping his job, he receives a warning. Meanwhile, a band of rebels, led by the hacker Spider, distribute counterfeit identification to assist individuals in boarding shuttles destined for Elysium, in a desperate attempt to receive medical assistance. While stationed at Elysium, Defense Secretary Delacourt is informed of 3 unauthorized shuttles heading towards the station, prompting her to quickly return to her office to address the issue. Despite being instructed to return to Earth, the shuttles refuse to comply, prompting Delacourt to utilize Kruger, a dormant operative whom she has concealed on Earth. Although this action violates the law, Delacourt disregards the consequences. Kruger equips himself with a missile launcher and successfully shoots down 2 of the shuttles before they arrive at the station. Despite Kruger's efforts to eliminate the incoming shuttles, one manages to evade the missile and successfully lands on Elysium. A woman quickly exits the shuttle and breaks into a residence, where she places her ailing daughter in a healing pod, which promptly cures her. However, a squad of robotic law enforcement officers appear and arrest the pair, intending to deport them to Earth. Meanwhile, on his way home, Max encounters his acquaintance Julio, who seeks his aid in stealing automobiles, but Max declines due to his fear of being incarcerated once again. The following day at Armadine, Max learns that an obstruction has blocked the entrance to the radioactive chamber. His manager demands that he enters the chamber to fix the issue, threatening to terminate his employment if he refuses. Although removing the obstruction proves to be an easy task, the door inadvertently shuts, activating the machine once more. Despite his colleagues' efforts to pry the door open, they fail to do so in time, and Max is left writhing in agony as he absorbs a substantial amount of radiation. After being released, Max is taken to the medical bay by the company and informed by a robot that he has 5 days left to live, although he can prolong his function by taking pills. Carlyle arrives on the scene after being notified of the production halt and demands that Max be terminated by the manager. Meanwhile, Delacourt is summoned to meet with President Patel, who accuses her of breaking the law by using a sleeper agent to kill 46 innocent people. Delacourt asserts that she will take all necessary measures to safeguard their dwelling and loved ones from barbarians, prompting Patel to caution her that repeating such actions will result in termination. Later on, Carlyle rendezvous with Delacourt to extend the space station's defense agreements. Delacourt ponders whether Carlyle can supersede Elysium's system and install a fresh leader. After Carlyle confirms he can, Delacourt proposes a 200-year contract if he installs her as the president, and he agrees. While at the hospital, Fry receives devastating news that her patient Matilda cannot be cured and must be discharged. Meanwhile, Max attempts to return home, but his illness overwhelms him, and Julio has to lend a hand. After he vomits, Max informs Julio of what happened and requests that he takes him to Spider. Max desires to purchase tickets to travel to Elysium, but he lacks the funds. He offers to do anything Spider requires in exchange for the tickets. Spider presents Max with a hazardous task that nobody else wants. He has developed a device capable of extracting organic data from a person's brain and transferring it to another. Max agrees to undertake the mission, which involves him acquiring access data from a billionaire to drain their bank accounts. However, he makes it a condition that Julio accompanies him and that his target is Carlisle. Spider agrees to these terms and furnishes Max with an exoskeleton suit that will compensate for the debilitation caused by the radiation and make him as strong as a robot. The process of integrating the exoskeleton with Max's bones and nervous system is intricate and time-consuming. However, it is ultimately successful, and Max is now capable of taking on any robot that attempts to impede him. Additionally, Max obtains an ID tattoo on his arm that will trick the system into believing he was born in Elysium. Meanwhile, Carlisle is encrypting his cerebral information, establishing a defense mechanism that will eliminate anyone who attempts to access his mind, and destroying his computer after he finishes. Carlisle prepares to depart for the station aboard his shuttle, while Max and his team arrive at Carlisle's facility to apprehend him. As Carlisle's shuttle takes off, Max fires at it, causing it to malfunction and ultimately crash. Delacourt, who is monitoring Carlisle to safeguard her own interests, becomes aware of the attack while on Elysium. Consequently, she dispatches Kruger and a military vessel to protect him. As Max's team approaches the crashed shuttle, they encounter a group of robots assigned to defend Carlisle. Max destroys one robot by shooting it, and engages in a hand-to-hand struggle with the other, ultimately decapitating it. They enter the shuttle and begin extracting the information from Carlisle's brain, only to discover that the data is corrupted. Just as they make this discovery, the military vessel arrives, prompting the group to flee. Unfortunately, Max experiences a sudden headache, slowing down the group's escape and providing Kruger with the opportunity to catch up and eliminate most of them. Max and Julio attempted to flee in a car, but unfortunately their vehicle was hit by explosives, causing it to overturn. While Max was crawling out of the wreckage, Kruger approached him and attacked him with a knife. Kruger then switched to a sword to finish him off, but Julio intervened and tried to shoot Kruger. Although his attempts failed, Kruger became enraged and killed Julio. Max took advantage of the chaos to retrieve a gun and attempted to shoot Kruger, but he activated an energy shield which caused him to pass out instead of being killed. Following a brief period of mourning for Julio, Max makes a hasty escape. In the meantime, Delacourt learns that Carlisle has succumbed to blood loss. When Kruger regains consciousness, Delacourt dispatches him to pursue Max. Kruger and his team examine the wreckage of the crashed shuttle and realize that Carlisle had the program to reboot Elysium's system stored in his mind. Now that Carlisle has passed away, this valuable information is likely in possession of Max. Consequently, they deployed droids to assist in the search for Max. To exacerbate the situation, Delacourt proclaims Los Angeles as a no-fly area, and Spider detects signal interference throughout the city. Later that evening, Fry prepares to take Matilda home, and upon stepping outside, she encounters Max, who requests her assistance with his stab wound. Fry suggests taking him to the hospital, but Max informs her that he is a fugitive, and therefore, public spaces are not a safe option. The following morning, Max awakens in Frey's residence with his injury treated. During his stay, Max discovers that Matilda is Frey's daughter, who is suffering from leukemia and has limited time left. Upon noticing Max's ID tattoo, Fry requests his assistance in getting Matilda to Elysium for medical treatment. However, Max explains that such an attempt could result in their deaths. He then departs from the premises, only to be confronted by a robot. Max flees and manages to disable the robot by throwing objects at it. Unfortunately, Kruger has received the transmission and quickly arrives at the scene. He storms into Frey's apartment and arrests her and Matilda for aiding a criminal. Max returns to Spider's hideout and demands his passage to Elysium. Spider informs Max that he cannot send shuttles due to the signal interference, but he notes that Max must be carrying something critical for the government to activate the jamming. Upon analyzing the data, Spider finds Elysium's system reboot program, which could have a significant impact on society if utilized. However, Max reveals that he only has a few hours to live and plans to use the data as leverage for a ticket to Elysium. Max then returns to the robot that pursued him and provokes Kruger to pursue him once more. Kruger arrives and finds Max holding a grenade and threatening to detonate it if anyone interferes, as this would result in the loss of the crucial data along with his life. Kruger agrees to take Max to Elysium, and upon boarding the shuttle, Max discovers that Fry and Matilda are also present. Kruger informs Delacourt that he has Max, prompting her to disable the signal interference so that they can transport him to Elysium. Spider swiftly restores his systems and begins monitoring Max via his exoskeleton. Upon learning that Max is being taken to Elysium, the rebels arm themselves and board their own shuttles. Later, Kruger's shuttle approaches Elysium, and Max attempts to apologize to Fry for involving her in the dangerous situation. However, Kruger and his accomplice launch an attack on Max, causing the pilot to lose control of the shuttle. During the scuffle, Max accidentally drops his grenade, which detonates and injures Kruger's face while also damaging the ship's engine. The shuttle experiences a crash in a residential area, triggering the security cameras to alert Delacourt. In response, Delacourt dispatches her team to apprehend all individuals on board the ship. After Max regains consciousness, he discovers that Fry is trapped in her seat, prompting him to utilize his newfound strength to assist her. Meanwhile, Kruger and his ally awaken and engage in a physical altercation with Max taking advantage of the situation. Fry seizes the opportunity to rescue Matilda by transporting her to a nearby residence to access a healing pod. However, the device requires a citizen ID to function, which they do not possess. As the guards arrive, they use tasers to subdue both Max and Fry. When Max regains consciousness again, he discovers that Delacourt and a team of technicians are examining Carlisle's data. Although the information appears to be intact, extracting it could result in Max's death. Despite this, Delacourt disregards the potential consequences and orders the procedure to proceed. As the rebels arrive at Elysium to search for Max, Kruger's henchmen imprison Fry and Matilda. Due to his critical condition, Kruger undergoes a medical procedure that not only restores his health but also grants him an exoskeleton similar to Max's. After breaking free, Max attacks the technicians to force them to reveal Frey's whereabouts and obtains their access cards. Meanwhile, Delacourt arrives and reprimands Kruger for his failure to complete the mission successfully. In response, Kruger stabs Delacourt and traps her with Fry. While Fry attempts to tend to Delacourt's injury, Kruger instructs his men to eliminate all politicians in the building while he searches for Max. The henchmen carry out the orders and use grenades to kill as many politicians as possible. When Max locates the control room, he discovers that it is in a state of disarray. As Max observes the monitors, he sees Fry and Matilda inside the building, and the rebels approaching closer. He contacts Spider using a communicator and asks if the program in his head can grant citizenship to everyone. Spider confirms that it is indeed possible, and they formulate a plan together. Max then sets out to search for Frey and encounters one of Kruger's henchmen in the same room. A fierce battle ensues, and Max eventually gains the upper hand, overpowering and fatally injuring Kruger's thug. Another henchman arrives and opens fire on Max, but he quickly retrieves a heavy firearm and retaliates, shooting the thug down in return. Subsequently, Max escorts Fry and Matilda to the elevator and instructs them to locate a healing pod. Despite Frey's concerns about the lack of identification, Max assures them that he will handle the matter and sends them on their way. At that moment, Max hears Kruger's voice in close proximity, indicating that he is still alive. The door opens, and Max prepares for a fight, but it turns out to be Spider and his group. One of the members is assigned to assist Fry and Matilda, while Max and the rebels head to Elysium's system room. However, they are intercepted by Kruger, who proceeds to eliminate anyone in his path. Max and Spider attempt to close the door, but Kruger manages to block their escape. As Max's headache returns, Kruger takes advantage and charges towards him. Max counters his attack, while Spider attempts to assist. In response, Kruger drops his sword, and Spider seizes the chance to intervene. However, Kruger responds by stabbing Spider's hand with a knife, before resuming his assault on Max. Despite their struggle, Spider manages to pull the knife out of his hand and rushes to hack the system room's door. Kruger gains the upper hand over Max and stabs him while taunting him for letting down a child. This infuriates Max, who launches himself at Kruger and proceeds to rip off his exoskeleton. With his mechanical support stripped away, Kruger is defenseless against Max's robotic strength. Faced with no other options, Kruger considers using a grenade to take them both down. Max responds swiftly, breaking free from Kruger's grip and tossing him off the platform. Just then, Spider appears, and upon entering with Max, he immediately secures the door to keep the approaching guards out. Meanwhile, Fry locates the pod and places Matilda inside, while Max interfaces his brain with Elysium's system. After performing all the required programming, Spider hands Max a remote control to initiate the system reboot. However, Spider cautions Max that pressing the button would mean certain death. Using the computer he's connected to, Max manages to contact Frey and express regret for not being able to be with her. Nonetheless, he reminds her that he's fulfilled their childhood promise by bringing her to Elysium. As Max presses the button, he starts recalling fond memories of him and Fry from their childhood. As Patel and additional guards arrive, intending to break down the door and detain Spider, The system undergoes a reboot that results in the ship losing power momentarily. Upon reactivation, the system incorporates new citizens into its database. The healing pod recognizes Matilda as a legitimate patient and begins to treat her, while the robots refuse to apprehend Spider due to the fact that arresting Elysium residents goes against the law. With the new inclusion of all Earth residents into the Elysium citizenry, the system becomes aware of those living in poverty and requiring medical care. Consequently, shuttles are dispatched to assist them. As the shuttles arrive, the impoverished individuals hurry to board them, hopeful for the salvation they bring. Meanwhile, Fry steps outside and gazes at the sky, reminiscing about the beautiful memories that Max left her with.